The economic history of Indonesia is shaped by its geographic location, its natural resources, as well as its people that inhabited the archipelagic realm that today formed the modern nation of the Republic of Indonesia. The foreign contacts and international trades with foreign counterparts also had shaped and sealed the fate of Indonesian archipelago, as Indians, Chinese, Arabs, and finally European traders reached the archipelago during the age of exploration and participated in spice trade, war and conquest. By the early 17th century, the Dutch East India Company, one of the earliest multinational company in world's economic history, has established the base in Indonesian archipelago as they monopolized spice trade from the archipelago. By 1800, the Dutch East Indies colonial statehood emerged and benefited from cash crop trades of coffee, tea, quinine, rubber and palm oil from the colony, also from mining sector of oil, coal, tin and copper. The colonial state would be succeeded by Indonesian Republic after the World War II. By the early 21st century, Indonesia rose to be the largest economy in Southeast Asia as one of the emerging market economies of the world, a member of G20 major economies and classified as a newly industrialized country. Ancient kingdoms. Initially, the economy of most of villages and polities in the archipelago relied heavily on rice agriculture, as well as trading of forest products, such as tropical fruits, hunted animals, plant resins, rattan and hardwood. Ancient kingdoms such as the Tarumanagara and Mataram were dependent on rice yields and tax. The archipelago since so long time ago was known for its abundance of natural resources, spices such as nutmeg and cloves from Maluku Islands, pepper and cubeb from southern Sumatra and West Java, rice from Java, gold, copper and tin from Sumatra, Borneo and the islands in between, camphor resin from Port of Baris, sapan and sandalwood from Lesser Sunda Islands, hardwoods from Borneo, ivory and rhino's horn from Sumatra and exotic bird feathers from eastern Indonesia are among a few products sought by traders worldwide. This foreign contact was started by small Indianized trading kingdoms in the early 4th century that nurtured contacts with other major civilizations. In Asian mainland, India and China, benefited by its strategic location on thriving maritime trade route between India and China. Polities in Indonesian archipelago soon would grow into a thriving, strong, and cosmopolitan trading empire such as Sriwijaya that rose in the 7th century. Sriwijaya. In the world of commerce, Sriwijaya rapidly rose to be a far-flung empire controlling the two passages between India and China, namely the Sunda Strait from Palembang and the Malacca Strait from Kedah. Arab accounts state that the empire of the Maharaja was so vast that in 2 years the swiftest vessel could not travel round all its islands, which produced camphor, aloes, cloves, sandalwood, nutmegs, cardamom and cubebs, ivory, gold and tin, making the Maharaja as rich as any king in India. Other than fostering the lucrative trade relations with India and China, Sriwijaya also established commerce link with Arabia. Highly possible, a messenger sent by Maharaja Sri Indravarman to deliver his letter for Caliph Umar ibn Abdulaziz of Umayyad in 718, was returned to Sriwijaya with Zanji, the caliph's present for Maharaja. Later the Chinese chronicle mentioned about Shiliti Opamo, Maharaja of Shilifashi in 724 he had sent the Emperor Serengchi as a gift. Sriwijaya would continue to dominate the economy of the Indonesian archipelago until declined in the 13th century. Majapahit in 14th century Java. The Majapahit kingdom would grow into a maritime empire that would control the trade and economy of the archipelago for another centuries. According to Chinese source from Ming Dynasty, Ying Yai Shanglan, Marwan reported the Javanese economy and market Rice is harvested twice a year, and its grain is small. They also harvest white sesame and lentils, but there is no wheat. This land produces sappan wood, diamond, sandalwood, incense, huyang pepper, cantharides, steel, turtles, tortoise shell, strange and rare birds, such as the large parrot as big as a hen, red and green parrots, 5-colored parrots that can imitate the human voice, also guinea fowl, peacock, battle-tree bird, pearl bird, and green pigeons. The beasts here are strange. There are white deer, white monkey, and various other animals. Pigs, goats, cattle, horses, poultries, and there are all types of ducks. For the fruits, there are all kinds of bananas, coconut, sugarcane, pomegranate, lotus, mang-ishi, watermelon, and lang cha. In addition, all types of squash and vegetables are there. Taxes and fines were paid in cash. Javanese economy had been partly monetized since the late 8th century, using gold and silver coins. Previously, the 9th century Wonoboyo hoard discovered in central Java shows that ancient Javan gold coins were seed-shaped, similar to corn, while the silver coins were similar to buttons. In about the year 1300, in the reign of Majapahit's first king, an important change took place. The indigenous coinage was completely replaced by imported Chinese copper cash. About 10,388 ancient Chinese coins weighing about 40 kilograms were even unearthed from the backyard of a local commoner in Sidoarjo in November 2008. Indonesian Ancient Relics Conservation Bureau of East Java verified that those coins dated as early as Majapahit era. The reason for using foreign currency is not given in any source, but most scholars assume it was due to the increasing complexity of Javanese economy and a desire for a currency system that used much smaller denominations suitable for use in everyday market transactions. This was a role for which gold and silver are not well suited. These Kepeng Chinese coins were thin rounded copper coins with a square hole in the center of it. The hole was meant to tie together the money in a string of coins. These small changes, the imported Chinese copper coins, enabled Majapahit further invention, a method of savings by using a slitted earthenware coin containers. These are commonly found in Majapahit ruins. The slit is the small opening to put the coins in. The most popular shape is boar-shaped selengan. Some idea of scale of the internal economy can be gathered from scattered data in inscriptions. The Kangoo inscriptions dated 1358 mentions 78 ferry crossings in the country. Majapahit inscriptions mention a large number of occupational specialities, ranging from gold and silversmiths to drink vendors and butchers. Although many of these occupations had existed in earlier times, the proportion of the population earning an income from non-agrarian pursuits seems to have become even greater during the Majapahit era. The great prosperity of Majapahit was probably due to two factors. Firstly, the northeast lowlands of Java were suitable for rice cultivation, and during Majapahit's prime numerous irrigation projects were undertaken, some with government assistance. Secondly, Majapahit's ports on the north coast were probably significant stations along the route to obtain the spices of Maluku, and as the spices passed through Java, they would have provided an important source of income for Majapahit. The Nagarakdagama states that the fame of the ruler of Majapahit attracted foreign merchants from far and wide, including Indians, Khmers, Siamese, and Chinese among others. While in later period, Ying-Yi Shanglan mentioned that large numbers of Chinese traders and Muslim merchants from west are settling in Majapahit port cities, such as Tuban, Gresik and Halung Galuh. A special tax was levied against them foreigners, possibly those who had taken up semi-permanent residence in Java and conducted some type of enterprise other than foreign trade. The Majapahit Empire had trading links with Chinese Ming Dynasty, Annam and Kampa in today Vietnam, Cambodia, Siamese Ayutthaya, Burmese Martaban and the South Indian Vijayanagara Empire. Islamic trading network. The Muslim traders had spread the Islamic faith across the trade routes that connects to the Islamic world, spanned from the Mediterranean, the Middle East, India, maritime Southeast Asia to China. Muslim traders from Arabian Peninsula and the Gulf has sailed Indonesian archipelago on the way to China since at least the 9th century, as testified through the discovery of Belitung shipwreck that contains cargoes from China, discovered offshore of Belitung Island. The Muslim traders and proselytizer had encouraged the rise of Islamic states in Indonesian archipelago. By the 13th century, Islam has gained its foothold in Indonesia through the establishment of Samudra Pasai in Aceh and Ternate Sultanate in the Maluku Islands. The spice-producing Maluku Islands indeed has gained its name from Arabic Jazirat al-Muluk, which means the peninsula or islands of kings. By the 14th century, these Muslim ports began to thrive as they welcomed Muslim traders from India and the Middle East. Among the most notable Muslim kingdoms of the Malacca Sultanate that control the strategic Malacca Strait, and Demak Sultanate that replace Majapahit as the regional power in Java. These sultanates in return also active on spreading Islamic faith in the archipelago, and by the late 15th century, Islam has toppled Hinduism and Buddhism as the majority faith in Java and Sumatra, and also quite significant in Sulawesi and northern Maluku. The Islamic polities in Indonesian archipelago formed the parts of the larger Islamic trading networks that spanned from Muslim Spain in the west to Muslim trading colonies and Chinese ports of the east, as spices from Indonesia such as cloves, nutmeg and pepper could finally reach spice markets in Canton, Damascus and Cairo. European spice and cash crop trade. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to reach Indonesian archipelago. The quest to dominate the source of the lucrative spice trade in the early 16th century, and the simultaneous Roman Catholic missionary efforts, saw the establishment of trading posts and forts, and a strong Portuguese cultural element that remains substantial in Indonesia, starting with the first exploratory expeditions sent from newly conquered Malacca in 1512. Portuguese fleet began to explore much of Indonesian archipelago and sought to dominate the sources of valuable spices. Later, the Portuguese presence in Indonesia was reduced to Sula, Flores and Timor in modern-day Nusa Tenggara. Following defeat in 1575 at Ternate at the hands of indigenous Ternatians, and its defeat to the Dutch, in early 17th century Dutch East India Company was founded. Its main business was profiting in intra-Asian trade and establishing direct spice trade between Indonesian archipelago and Europe. One by one the Dutch began to wrestle Portuguese possessions in Indonesia. It started with Dutch conquests in Ambon, North Maluku and Banda, and a general Portuguese failure for sustained control of trade in the region. Statistically, the VOC eclipsed all of its rivals in the Asia trade. Between 1602 and 1796 the VOC sent almost 1 million Europeans to work in the Asia trade on 4,785 ships, and netted for their efforts more than 2.5 million tons of Asian trade goods. The VOC enjoyed huge profits from its spice monopoly through most of the 17th century, VOC took huge profit from monopolizing the Malucan spice trade, and in 1619 the VOC established a capital in the port city of Jakarta and changed the city name into Batavia. Over the next 2 centuries the company acquired additional ports as trading bases and safeguarded their interests by taking over surrounding territory. It remained an important trading concern and paid an 18% annual dividend for almost 200 years. European colonial economy. Dutch East Indies was formed from the nationalized colonies of the Dutch East India Company, which came under the administration of the Dutch government in 1800. The economic history of the colony was closely related to the economic health of the mother country. Despite increasing returns from the Dutch system of land tax, Dutch finances had been severely affected by the cost of the Java War and the Padre War, and the Dutch loss of Belgium in 1830 brought the Netherlands to the brink of bankruptcy. In 1830, a new Governor-General, Johannes van den Bosch, was appointed to make the Indies pay their way through Dutch exploitation of its resources, with the Dutch achieving political domination throughout Java for the first time in 1830. It was possible to introduce an agricultural policy of government-controlled forced cultivation, termed cultuurstelsel in Dutch and tanam paksa in Indonesian. Farmers were required to deliver, as a form of tax, fixed amounts of specified crops, such as sugar or coffee. Much of Java became a Dutch plantation and revenue rose continually through the 19th century, which were reinvested into the Netherlands to save it from bankruptcy. Between 1830 and 1870, 1 billion guilders were taken from Indonesia, on average making 25% of the annual Dutch government budget. The cultivation system, however, brought much economic hardship to Javanese peasants, who suffered famine and epidemics in the 1840s. Critical public opinion in the Netherlands led to much of the cultivation system's excesses being eliminated under the agrarian reforms of the liberal period. Dutch private capital flowed in after 1850, especially in tin mining and plantation estate agriculture. The Billiton Company's tin mines off the eastern Sumatra coast was financed by a syndicate of Dutch entrepreneurs, including the younger brother of King William III. Mining began in 1860. In 1863, Jacob Nienhuys obtained a concession from the Sultanate of Delhi for a large tobacco estate. The Dutch East Indies were opened up to private enterprise and Dutch businessmen set up large, profitable plantations. Sugar production doubled between 1870 and 1885. New crops such as tea and cinchona flourished, and rubber was introduced, leading to dramatic increases in Dutch profits. Changes were not limited to Java or agriculture. Oil from Sumatra and Kalimantan became a valuable resource for industrializing Europe. Dutch commercial interests expanded off Java to the outer islands, with increasingly more territory coming under direct Dutch control or dominance in the latter half of the 19th century. However, the resulting scarcity of land for rice production, combined with dramatically increasing populations, especially in Java, led to further hardships. The colonial exploitation of Indonesia's wealth contributed to the industrialization of the Netherlands, while simultaneously laying the foundation for the industrialization of Indonesia. The Dutch introduced coffee, tea, cacao, tobacco and rubber, and large expanses of Java became plantations cultivated by Javanese peasants, collected by Chinese intermediaries, and sold on overseas markets by European merchants. In the late 19th century, economic growth was based on on heavy world demand for tea, coffee, and cinchona. The government invested heavily in a railroad network, as well as telegraph lines, and entrepreneurs opened banks, shops and newspapers. The Dutch East Indies produced most of the world's supply of quinine and pepper, over a third of its rubber, a quarter of its coconut products, and a fifth of its tea, sugar, coffee, and oil. The profit from the Dutch East Indies made the Netherlands one of the world's most significant colonial powers. The Koninklijke Paketvaartmaatschappij shipping line supported the unification of the colonial economy and brought inter-island shipping through to Batavia, rather than through Singapore, thus focusing more economic activity on Java. The worldwide recession of the late 1880s and early 1890s saw the commodity prices on which the colony depended collapse. Journalists and civil servants observed that the majority of the India's population were no better off than under the previous regulated cultivation system economy, and tens of thousands starved. Commodity prices recovered from the recession, leading to increased investment in the colony. The sugar, tin, copper and coffee trade on which the colony had been built thrived, and rubber, tobacco, tea and oil also became principal exports. Political reform increased the autonomy of the local colonial administration, moving away from central control from the Netherlands, whilst power was also diverged from the central Batavia government to more localized governing units. The world economy recovered in the late 1890s and prosperity returned. Foreign investment, especially by the British, were encouraged. By 1900, foreign-held assets in the Netherlands Indies totaled about 750 million guilders, mostly in Java. After 1900, upgrading the infrastructure of ports and roads was a high priority for the Dutch, with the goal of modernizing the economy, facilitating commerce, and speeding up military movements. By 1950, Dutch engineers had built and upgraded a road network with 12,000 kilometers of asphalted surface, 41,000 kilometers of metalled road area and 16,000 kilometers of gravel surfaces. In addition, the Dutch built 7,500 kilometers of railways, bridges, irrigation systems covering 1.4 million hectares of rice fields, several harbors, and 140 public drinking water systems. Wim Ravenstein has said that, with these public works, Dutch engineers constructed the material base of the colonial and post-colonial Indonesian state.